everybody, you just purchased a new Lavina concrete grinder and you're not sure what to do. In this video we're going to talk about receiving the crate, unboxing the crate, and then setting up the machine ready for use. So that way as soon as you receive it, you can get using it right away on your first day of receiving the grinder. So the first step is when you're getting the crate off the truck from the freight company, you want to do a thorough inspection. Don't just receive it, sign the paperwork, and then go to town, because if there's anything in the crate that's damaged or the crate itself is damaged, we need to be able to document that from the freight company upon receiving so we can file that insurance claim. It is very rare, but when it happens, it's very, very costly, and these grinders are not cheap, so we want to make sure that we have the right documentation upon receiving the grinder. So when the freight company is dropping this off at your home or your shop or wherever you're getting the delivery, do a thorough walkthrough, inspect the entire crate, and look for any damages with the crate itself to see if anything's broken, maybe misaligned, anything like that. And then of course, if it is, write a note on the bill of lading, which is the paperwork that the driver has, and just notate what the damages are and take some pictures. Now that you've taken some pictures, open up the top of the crate and look inside to see the machine. This is very important, and I know it sounds kind of silly, but if there are damages, we want to make sure it's documented properly so that we can either get you a replacement grinder or file an insurance claim for the repairs. We have missed this step with some of our customers in the past, and it's been very costly with claims being denied. So I stress this very, very highly so that when you receive the machine, you're inspecting it before you sign for it. So zooming in real quick over here, we're going to remove the top layer of this crate. All right, now that we've unscrewed all the screws from the top lid, we're just going to take it off. All right, now that we have the lid off of the crate and we're looking at the grinder, you'll notice the grinder's actually shifted a little bit sideways. This is actually fairly normal. I wouldn't say it happens every single time, but when we do see this shift, of course we want to inspect further just to make sure nothing got damaged, but we want to continue looking at this. Now, if I'm receiving this from a truck driver, I'm still not going to sign the paperwork yet. I want to unscrew all these panels and make sure the machine is good, because if it's not, I want to document that on the paperwork from the driver before the driver leaves. It's worth taking a few more minutes to make sure it's documented properly. All right, so looking at the machine here, you'll see the shroud is tipped up a little bit. That's not a big deal because it's a floating shroud anyway. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look underneath the head of this. I'm just gonna look around the machine itself. This one has a little bit of a scuff, but that's not a scratch on the machine. That's just from the wood board, so that'll be okay. Everything looks good. I'm gonna take the other 3 panels off anyway, just for safekeeping. If everything looks good, sign for the paperwork to the driver so the driver can leave. Once you do sign that paperwork though, you're receiving it assuming that it's in good working order. All right, now we have all the panels off the crate and we're just looking at the machine, so we're going to inspect further for any issues. If all looks good, we're just going to take it off. This box right here is the propane tank, so we're going to take that off first just so it's out of the way. Now we built this little ramp here just so that it's easy to remove the machine. If you don't have something like this, a couple 2x4s or 2x6s would be fine. These straps here are metal strips or straps, so I'm just going to cut those. All right, now that we cut the straps, the machine is just freestanding on the pallet. I'm just gonna tilt the handle up, tilt the weights back, and then wheel the machine right off the crate. If you have a 25 or a 30 propane or even a 20 propane, this next step is going to be very similar. It's just a little bit of a different setup on the 20 than it is on these new S series for the 25 and the 30. But I'm going to demonstrate everything on the newer model to show you some of the ways that we need to get this machine ready to use. The very first thing that we're going to do, of course, is check the battery. Notice this pigtail right here is not connected. It should come that way. So we're going to take this one, and we're going to connect those, and that's the battery connection. If you don't connect the battery, of course, it's not going to start. If you're going to leave this machine for an extended period of time, I would also recommend disconnecting the battery. That way your battery doesn't drain out. So when the machine comes, this floating shroud is going to come set to the higher setting just for shipping purposes. But when we want to get it ready to work, we're going to take these screws out, reduce it down to the highest eyelet setting here. So that way once we put our tooling on underneath the grinder and the head is lifted up, the shroud is actually sitting recessed down on the floor. So this brush skirt is actually touching the floor. There's 2 of these, one on each side of the machine, and there's 3 positions. So I'm just going to take it off and set it on the highest position. So that way this shroud is touching the floor the entire time. You'll notice on the front here there's a mounting plate. This is if you want to order the optional 3rd wheel for the front. You can do that. Of course the bigger machines are a little bit heavier, so you can order the larger wheel. It basically just comes out in the front like this, so you can wheel it around without tilting it back. It doesn't come with it, but you can order that as an option, and that's where that's going to mount right there. Up here we have our lights. You can position these so they're facing the floor. They pivot, they turn, put them wherever you want, but that's a good position to have them facing down like this, so that way you can see the floor in front of you. Likewise on the back of the machine there's also a light shining straight down on the floor, and that way you can see your scratch pattern as you're grinding. This is the weight that's going to counterbalance the head of the machine backwards if you're moving the machine, in the upright position if you like, if you don't want weight on the head as you're grinding, or have the weight all the way forward to add the head pressure while you're grinding. That's pivoted basically by this pivot point here, this hydraulic, and then you just pull this out and you can position it how you like. That's straight up. And then that would be down. So while you're grinding, having both weights in this forward position, that's going to give you maximum head pressure for grinding for the most efficient, productive grinding as you go. I like to have the weights forward during transit just to make sure it's not moving around. But if you have to physically move it, moving around on the job site, in and off the truck or trailer, it's easiest to have these weights in the back position to counterbalance the weight of the machine so you can tilt it back. This right here is the tooling key. It's just on a little carabiner. You can take this off and you'll use this key to put your tooling on and off. We have a separate video that talks about how to put tooling on the grinder and take tooling off the grinder, and this key will be used in that video to basically pivot the lock plate so that you can put the tooling on and then lock it in place. I like to keep this somewhere handy on a hook or a hole or an eyelet. Of course, when it comes with the machine, it comes right around here, and just keep it in the same spot so that every time you're looking for it, it's always where you need it. On the back side of the machine is where we're going to put our propane tank. This is the aluminum tank that comes with it. We're just going to unclamp this here. This holds the tank in place. Plop the machine into place. Of course, this is after it's been filled. And then here we have the hose. That's just going to connect here. And we have to pivot this a little bit just to get it in a position that's favorable for the hose. On the back side of this handle, we also have a carbon monoxide detector. This is going to detect how much carbon monoxide is in the air for safety purposes. Some machines have them, the newer machines do, the older machines do not. We have a separate video that talks about carbon monoxide and safety. If your machine does not come with one of these on the machine, you can get a separate one that you can just mount to the machine that runs on batteries. But this one is nice that it's on the actual machine itself. Some of them are on the back side here, and then some of them are also on the top, on the front side, but this specific model just has it right here. But that's what that is, that's carbon monoxide detector. Down here we have our water control system. This is if you're doing any kind of wet grinding or wet polishing. There's 2 valves here. You'll notice a blue one and the red one. This blue one is going to control if the water source is coming from the tank or from the hose. So in this position, it's coming from the hose. So you can hook a garden hose right up to this right here. Or if you want to fill the water tank on the actual main machine, then you would just turn this valve so that way the water source from this valve is pulling from the tank and not the hose. And then this valve right here, this is the on-off valve. So in this position, we're turning the water off so that the water is not going to the head. In this position, the valve is open, so that way the water is going to the head. Under this flap here is where the water tank is. So this new model has this dust cover, so that way underneath it, you're all protected so you're not getting any dust or dirt down into the water tank. You've got a little tray here. These are just extra bushings for the heads of the grinder. And then underneath here is where you put the water. If you have one of the older machines, it does not have a stopper or the flap. A 32-ounce cup actually fits perfect right inside this hole of the water tank, and that'll keep your water tank clean. But if you have one of these newer models, it has this rubber stopper, and you can just plug that hole up right there. Inside this blue envelope is the operator's quick guide. It's not a full manual. Just go online and you can read the whole manual prior to use. Use this, keep it, set it aside. Of course, we're not going to use it right now, but that's what this is here. This right here is the badge that contains the model number and the serial number. So if you have any questions down the road for warranty purposes, or you just want to know which model the machine is or the serial number, that's where the badge plate is that contains the model number and the serial number. All right, now switching gears, we're going to lower the handle down, and I'm going to show you all the different controls on the handle itself. This one has 2 levers. There's a lever here and a lever here. Now that we have the handle down and in place, ready to grind, you can see with me standing here from an operator's position, this is fairly perfect. The first step to turn the machine on is to release the emergency stop. When it's not in use, this should be in the down position. When you're going to put it to use, just turn it, it'll release, and then come to the up position. We have two switches right here. This one is for the head of the grinder. This basically, when you push it like that, it's going to engage the clutch. When you push it backwards, it's going to disengage the clutch. When you're starting the machine, you do not want the clutch engaged, so this is going to be in the back position. This switch right here is for the lights. Of course, I have the ignition turned off, so that's why the lights are not turning on, but that's going to be the off position. Since we do have the battery connected, that's what this says right here, battery disconnected for shipping. Of course, when you receive the machine, you can take that off, but for shipping purposes, we'll leave that on, of course. So turning the key on, you can see this illuminates, and if I hit this switch right here, the lights will turn on. So we have the two lights in the front, we have the one light in the back down here. So if I turn that off, lights turn off, but the ignition is still technically on. If I push this switch, you can hear the clutch engage, and then it turns off, engage, off. When we go to start the machine, we just want to make sure that is not engaged. With the propane tank on, filled, and connected, as well as the battery being connected, I would now start the machine, but of course, being brand new, this propane tank does not have propane in it, so I'm not going to actually start it as part of this video. But this is where you would have this switch off, e-stop up, everything connected, and then I would turn, crank, and start this right here. Up here we have our throttle control. We're going to keep the choke on to get it started when it's cold, let it warm up for maybe 30 seconds to maybe 2 minutes, and then we're going to gradually increase the speed of the throttle to get this thing fully running. On this actual control module here, you'll see a couple buttons. This is going to show you the tachometer and the battery output. Right now we're at 12.2 volts because the machine is off. Of course, if it's running, it's going to be higher. But you can scroll through the menu using the plus and the minus buttons here, and you can select using the enter, and then of course the back buttons. This will show you the entire service of the machine, when it's due for oil change, when you need to check the filters. So whatever you got to change or check in the machine for service, this is going to tell you when to check that so you can bring it in for maintenance. And this little light here right now that's green, that will illuminate red or flash red when it's time for service. And then of course it's just going to show you the machine hours and how many hours until the next service or how many hours past due that you are for that service. Here is the warranty sticker, so if you scan that sticker with your cell phone, that will take you online to register the machine for the warranty, and that just documents everything to make sure that your purchase date is in sync with the machine itself, and that way if you have any issues down the road that need service, then we can hopefully get you covered under warranty. Right here is a safety warning sticker, but you'll notice there's another QR code right here as well. If you scan that with your cell phone, that will take you right to the owner's manual for the machine. I do highly recommend reading the entire manual. Of course, it's a really expensive machine. You want to know how to use it in all detail. So scan that with your phone, read the owner's manual, and then of course, if you ever need to reference it down the road, it's easy to access right there on the machine. So if I'm going to stop the machine, the first thing I'm going to do is disengage the clutch right there. I'm going to idle back the throttle just a little bit, and then I'm going to reach through up here. There's a valve for the propane tank. I'm going to close that. You're not going to wrench it tight because you don't want to damage the valve, and that will turn off the gas supply to the engine. The engine will die. Then I'm going to turn the key off and then push down the e-stop. Everything is completely shut off and disconnected. Now if I'm going to move the machine, I can just take this handle, bring it back to the up position with the weights back, of course. Right now they're forward, I'll have to move them back. Then I can just tilt the machine back, and then I can roll it wherever I want for the job site. Going through some of the major components on the engine, starting on the left side over here, we have the propane pressure regulator. And then right in front of it, we have the oil filter. Here's one of the spark plugs. This is the muffler with an O2 sensor sticking out the top. The exhaust actually comes out this hole right here. On the top, we have the air filter. If I open this up, you'll see two filters on the inside. There's a primary filter and a secondary filter. This comes right off. Here's the primary filter, and then here's the secondary filter. That's going to be part of the maintenance to check that, clean that if needed, and or replace them if needed. And this is notched so you can only put it on one way. And then we're going to switch over to the other side. We have the oil fill tube, and there's also the dipstick. So if I open this up, you'll see the dipstick for checking the oil. This is the oil drain hose, so if you're changing the oil yourself, the filter's on that side. You're going to fill here, but this is the drain hose. You would just disconnect this bolt here. This hose will flop down. You can either go to the front here or through this hole and then loosen that. and the oil will drain out of here into an oil pan. And then when you're done, of course, just tilt it back up, fill your oil, check it, and go to town. Right here we have the computer module, and then in front of that we have 3 different fuse holders. So if there's ever anything that's not working right, the first thing I would check is your fuses. This one's a 30 amp, a 10 amp, and I believe that one's also a 10 amp. But just to show you how it comes apart, that just unplugs, and then you've got your fuse there. Pop it out, pop a new one in. If you have a multimeter, you can even test it, and that just keeps it clean. All right, so that is the complete walkthrough of the Lavina L25GK-S7. This is the one with the Kohler motor. There's also one with the Kawasaki, but this way you get to see the unboxing, the uncrating, the receiving, and a walkthrough of all the components of the machine, getting it ready to use for the first time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out anytime or comment at the bottom of this video, and we'll be happy to help. Have a good day.